Okay. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Visiting Lecture today with the student of Baptist University in Malawi. Welcome to the Honorable Miss Pacharo Njoloma as a lecturer at Social Work Development Department. As for the topic today is family and child welfare in Malawi, opportunity and challenge. Yeah. And for today's section is being explained on the University STEKOM YouTube channel. And now I will read over again this afternoon. First, we will start with presentation by Mrs. Pacharo. And after the presentation, we will continue with the Q&A section. And in the next section, we have the terms of documentation and last is closing. Okay. Let's begin. We will start class presentation delivered by Ms. Pacharo. Thank you.
Thank you so much for introducing me. I hope I am clear.
And to business, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear your voice.
Am I clear now?
Still no. Oh.
Is this better?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. As he has introduced me, is Pacharo. It means the world. I am a lecturer under social work department. My specialty is actually in community development, and I have a master's degree in rural development and management. Today, I thought it wise that I should share on the issue of family and child welfare in Malawi. You might be wondering, why have I combined family and child welfare? I want to zero in so much on child welfare in Malawi. But according to our constitution, it is the mandate of the family to actually take care of children and to provide a safe environment for children and to provide for the basic necessities for children. So when we talk about child welfare, we also go hand in hand with the family because of the law, but also the community expectation that has been placed on families when it comes to child welfare. So maybe just a definition. When we talk about family services here, we are looking at services that we provide to children in their own homes, all right? And usually these services, we address issues to do with child neglect, child abuse, and also just to promote the general being of children within the family unit. So here in Malawi, when we are talking about family welfare, before children are removed from their families, that's like in extreme cases where you actually have to remove children from families and place them in foster homes. We try to make sure that some of the issues are actually sorted within the family so that children are raised within the bounds of the family and their communities in where they come from. And then when we are looking at child welfare system, we are looking at services that are designed for the safety of children as well as families. And children welfare look into issues to make sure that families have all the necessary supports they need to care for the children successfully. And then just also to define a child, here we follow the UN definition of a child. So a child is everyone who is below the age of 18. I know that maybe in some countries, when it comes to like maybe marriages and the like, their tradition or their local laws makes a provision to say maybe if parents consent to 16 years old for girls, like how they do it in the United States, if parents consent 16 years, someone can get married and they can, you know, live by themselves. Here in Malawi, we still maintain the 8 to 18 years as the standard for who a child is. So when we are looking at the provision of services such as shelter, food, education, and the like, health, the family or the child welfare looks into these services for people between the ages of 0 up to 18 years old. So in Malawi, our family structure, we follow two main types. We have patrino, where the descent as well as inheritance, as well as where you trace your lineage from, comes from your father's side. So about 60% of Malawians actually follow this matrilineal type of marriages. And then in matrilineal, we are looking at where your descent, your lineage, as well as inheritance. And here we also add conducting rituals and making decisions. It all falls on the mother's side of the family. And I mean, on the mother's side of the family. So from these two types of marriages, we have different types of families. Actually, we have several. But here in Malawi, that two families are predominant: extended family, where for this is our traditional kind of family, where you have the parents, the mother, the father, and their biological children, plus the extended family, on which most of the cases are their older mothers, so their parents, the older generation. And then also, other than their parents, they also take care of maybe their nieces, their cousins, and their uncles, so they live under one roof. So that's more of the traditional family. But we also have nuclear families where you have a man or a husband and a wife and just their children. And with the coming in of technology, but also the exposure of Western culture, people are becoming more modernized and more families are becoming nuclear families. Nowadays, people are opting to take care of their relatives from wherever their relatives are and not bringing them into their homes the way the traditional family was. So if you'd allow me, I would like to zero in into the main reason for my presentation, the challenges of the Malawian family. Over the years, because of the exposure that we have actually gained through social media, but also people traveling abroad and experiencing different styles of life, different living styles, being exposed to modernized ways of living. Its advantages, people have options. People are to say maybe this is how we can better take care of our families and the like, but it has also brought challenges to the Malawian families. So some of the challenges, or one of the key challenges that is there, is actually financial problems. And this financial problem, it comes about because of the lifestyles that people are living. So you would find out that because of the exposure to the modern world, all right, people have become modernized. There are always new technologies coming up. A good example would be an iPhone, all right? In the past, if you had an iPhone, then people would say, okay, you're a rich person. Nowadays, everybody has an iPhone. But you'd also learn that what happens most of the time is when a new iPhone comes out, now people are saying, okay, I'm going to exchange my iPhone and get a new iPhone. But if you look at the amount of money that families make versus the type of lifestyle that they want to live, there's a disconnect there. So this has actually ended a lot of families into financial problems, where you actually have families living on debt to actually maintain a certain standard of living and a certain lifestyle. So that's what I mean by financial problems. And then a recent study has also shown that we have gambling problems in the family. With the coming in of betways and other facilities that are there for people to actually gamble and make money, this has actually become a problem, not just for the families in terms of the man or the woman, but also for the children, because now people are developing an addiction to gambling. And this gambling has also led to a lot of financial problems for the Malawian family. So these challenges are actually interlinked, they're interrelated. Then another challenge that has come in recent years also is the issue of infidelity. This is also a challenge with the Malawian family. And this is even more prominent, especially in families that are living in urban areas. Why am I saying infidelity is a challenge? Because in the communities, each and every community has its sets of laws, rules, and standards. So most of the communities in Malawi, they actually believe in monogamous relationships. So you have one man and one woman. Of course, we do have other regions and other cultures, for instance, the Ngonis, that they actually accept polygamy. And we also have religions such as Islam that accept polygamy. And because we coexist, this is normal within those religions as well as in those cultures. But the majority of the cultures actually believe the social construct of monogamous marriages. So of recent years, we have actually had a high rise of divorce. By the way, I think as of this year, our divorce rate has gone to about 56%. And one of the key reasons, top 5 reasons for the divorce are issues of infidelity. And the infidelity is on the mother's side as well as on the husband's side. So it's not, if we look at it from the gender perspective, we can't say it's actually one gender that is committing infidelity. It's actually both genders. Then the other challenge is communication. Communication actually has proven to be one of the key causes of divorce here in Malawi. And also it has been cited as one of the key challenges when it comes to Malawian families. Communication challenges come in because maybe people married from different religions, different backgrounds, different beliefs, or they have different personalities. And one of the things that maybe our culture has also not done well is to teach us on how to communicate with others, but also on how to be allowing and accommodating of people that are actually different from us. So issues of communication have also been a challenge in Malawian communities. And these issues actually lead to stress, which is also another challenge that is there in Malawian families. This stress is as a result of challenges in communication, financial problems, growing expectations from the society as well as from within families. And this stress has actually resulted to a lot of people, especially the fathers and also the mothers, to turn to alcohol and drug abuse as a coping mechanism. And lastly, one of the challenges is poverty. So already, you know, we are actually one of the poorest countries. We're like in the top 10 of the poorest countries in the world. And over the past 2 years, Malawians have actually been hit by a lot of natural disasters and other unforeseen circumstances. So all these have actually have affected people's finances. They have affected people's food production and day-to-day living. And we actually have about over 200 families that were actually displaced just this year because of the floods. And because of that, it is also contributing to the issue of poverty. So those are some of the challenges of the Malawian families. And all these challenges, though they emanate from the family, they actually impact the children. Okay, they actually impact the children. So if there's a financial problem, it is going to trickle down to the children. Why? Because families are actually the ones that are tasked with the responsibility to look after children. So, and if the parents are also stressed, if the parents have communication problems, children have also been, research also shows that children are the one who actually suffer, okay? So let's look at the problems faced by Malawian children. Poverty is one of them. Okay, so when it comes to poverty, as we're saying, a lot of Malawians are actually what? They are actually poor. And this poverty trickles down to children. So you find that children, a good number of Malawian children do not have the basic necessities they need for their development. So they don't have shelter, or they do not have the standard of shelter that they require for their development. They do not take in as much nutrition as they are supposed to take because of issues of food security. So poverty is one of the challenges. Then secondly, we also have one of the highest rate of infant mortality rates. So per year, I think our infant mortality rate is 110 deaths per 1,000 live births, which is still high. So that's also a second challenge. And then the third challenge is the right to food. Malawian children also have a challenge for them to actually access food that they need for their development. When people are grown, all right, it's rare to find that a grown-up person is malnourished, or because our bodies have already developed to a certain extent. Maybe what we might be missing are vitamins and things like that. But also you can agree with me that for a grown-up person, if you do not have enough resources, it is okay to say, I'm going to miss lunch and just take supper. But that's not the same with children. They need to consume certain foods for them to develop. So already the rights of Malawian children are actually not met, especially the right to food. Then Malawian children also suffer a lot of discrimination. Where does this discrimination come from? Firstly, it comes from our traditional practices. We do have traditional practices that actually marry off girls at a young age, thereby refusing their right to actually attain an education. Then also, secondly, the way some of our institutions are set up, they are actually not sensitive to the needs of children, especially those children that are living with a disability. So for instance, in our school system, we do what we call inclusive education, but the application or the implementation of inclusive education is not actually done to the standard that it should happen. So for instance, if I have a physical disability, I will still be put in the same class with everybody else that does not have any physical disability. And then there will not be special facilities in a lot of schools to actually accommodate for the needs of those that have what? Physical disability. The same goes for children that actually have neurological disabilities. So for instance, we do not have public institutions that can actually teach children with autism, even though we actually have a very large number of children that are autistic. The same way, children with a learning ability, we do not have public institutions that can actually teach children with learning disabilities. We do have about 3 institutions that actually take in children that are special need. But however, these institutions, because they are private, they are actually pricey. So you'd see that children that actually attend those institutions are those whose parents are actually very rich and can afford to pay for the tuition. And then another problem is child abuse. In our communities, children are actually taken as properties, okay? They belong to the parents. And under child abuse, we have what we call corporal punishment. So there is a way you punish a child where you don't cause any harm to them. So I can spank a child, but not cause any harm to them. That will not constitute abuse. I can punish a child and not cause psychological trauma or emotion trauma to them, because that translates to abuse. So that line to teach parents to say, when you're punishing a child, constitutes as abuse, and this is punishment, that one is not there. So you find out that a lot of children are actually abused by their parents and their caretakers. Then we also have a rising number, or an alarming case of sexual abuse, especially girls. So girls are usually sexually abused by their caretakers and also their neighbors, and even in extreme cases by even their parents, so their fathers. So we have those cases of abuse, and it is quite common. Then we also have an issue of street children, which is also rising. So because of poverty, there have been a lot of children that have actually left their homes and they beg in the towns, or they do piecework in the towns, and they choose to stay in the streets. So government did put interventions, and also some non-governmental organizations where they actually built shelters and homes where they would actually take these children and then they would keep them in the homes, provide accommodation, provide food, and also provide some psychosocial counseling, and then eventually reintegrate these children back into their societies. But what has been a challenge is the street culture. So research is also showing that most of the children that are in the streets, even if they go through this program of being trained and then being reintegrated back into their communities, when they go back into their communities, you find out that their parents are still poor. So they end up going back into the street, and the process starts all over again. Then the other challenge that's there when it comes to Malawian children is child labor. Our legal age for children to start working is 14 years. But the law also stipulates what kind of work a child can do at 14, plus also how many hours the child should work at 14 years old. So usually if a child is working at 14, they are only allowed to work outside of school hours. That's number one. Two, they are entitled to a fair wage. So they should be paid what is due to them. And then thirdly, they should not be given any job that is more than their age. So most of the times they can work as a shopkeeper, or maybe they can clean a shop and clean a house, because those are things that maybe a 14-year-old might be able to do. But because of issues of poverty, you do find that parents sometimes will send their children to work as full-time maids from as young as 13 years old. And then also because we are an agriculture nation, and a lot of people have farms and they hire out people, tenants, to actually come during the farming seasons to work on the land. These tenants also come with their children, and instead of sending their children to school, they actually involve the children in the work that they're doing. So this also infringes on the rights of the children. We do have international labor organization that has actually been trying to change and to challenge this tradition of making children work in the farming industry. However, the same efforts have not been put when it comes to domestic work. So this is still a challenge. So we've looked at all these challenges that Malawian children have. But as social work, from the research that we have had right here at DMI University, there are some opportunities that we feel they can be exploited and explored for the betterment of the life of the children here in Malawi. So, for instance, the first opportunity that we have seen is civic education on parenting. What we have noticed is issues of neglect, for instance, in our culture. A lot of people do not know that they are neglecting their children. For example, you can actually have a woman who is saying, okay, I'm going to the field, and the woman will leave their child unattended to for an entire 8 hours while they're in the field, and the child is probably 8 years old. They do not know that that is neglect, because for them, that's what tradition has been. So we feel that parents need to be educated, all right? And then also an education on parenting, such as using the strategies of parenting by George Banner, such as preparation to say before you even have a child, or when you have a child, you need to prepare for them. What is my child going to eat? How am I going to find that particular food for my child? And then you also have to prepare where will my child go for school, all right? So instead of receiving children as something that has happened all over a sudden, parents should actually be taught to prepare for their children, which is something that in our culture, it is not a practice. The child comes, and then as they are progressing in life, people decide on what and how they are going to raise the children. But these are conversations, or these are things that should be well thought of before even the children came. And then another thing is for parents to also find out on how they are going to measure the success of their children. Okay, how are they going to measure the success of children in terms of education? How are they going to measure the success of the child to say in the education the child is doing well? Then also the issue of pressure management. The pressure management is on two fronts. Parents, because of finances, and the like, they have their own pressures. And then students also, on the other hand, they also have their own pressures at school. So parents should come up with ways on how they can help their children to deal with pressure. And also parents should come up with effective ways on how they can deal with their pressure. So issues to do with stress, issues to do with depression, issues to do with work stress, as well as managing home stress. Parents should be actually educated on such things. And then also parents should be educated on how to protect their children. So issues of child abuse or child neglect, parents should actually think about ways in which a child can be protected. And this also goes beyond the home, but even in our schools. One of the challenges that Malawian children face in school is the issue of bullying. So how do children deal with bullies? Okay, and how can parents actually protect children from bullies? So civic education is one of the opportunities we can explore when it comes to trying to eradicate the challenges that children have. And then secondly, teaching children safety procedures. So parents should also try to teach children from a young age on how they can protect them from situations that can put them in danger. So they must teach their child, how do you recognize that this might be a potential space where maybe you can be exploited, or maybe you can be sexually abused, or you can be physically abused, or we even have issues of actually child abductions. How can children actually know that maybe I'll be abducted? Okay, so parents should actually teach children how to recognize danger and also where to report. So for instance, issues of sexual harassment, physical harassment, and even emotional harassment. A lot of children experience this, but they are not taught where to report. It is also a cultural thing because sometimes people want to hide. For instance, if an uncle rapes a niece, people would like to hide that and keep it under the family. But students must be taught that that is not what? That is not normal. They should be taught where they can report in case something like that happens. And where they should be reporting should be a place where they know that they'll be what? Believed. And then children must also be taught to refuse, all right? They should be taught to refuse. Sometimes it's very hard to refuse something from someone who is older than you or someone who is in authority, but children should actually be taught to say, no, I don't feel comfortable, or maybe let me consult my parents. You're saying you have this piece work for me, let me consult my parents for me. And then another thing is to understand family dynamics. Okay, so in as much as we are saying parents are the ones that are actually responsible for raising children and the like, and our most common type of family is extended, where you have your uncles, your fathers, and the like. We need children to understand family dynamics to say the person you can actually trust is either your mother or your father. And your extended family sometimes may not look at you as a direct relative. So their actions towards you might not always be as innocent. And this must actually be taught to the children. Another thing we have also, that research is also showing, is that a lot of children are abused by the maids and the helpers in the house. So for children, most of the times, they take the domestic helpers as part of the family, and sometimes are afraid to report these things because they feel like they're going to put a family member in trouble. But family dynamics should be taught, and children should feel comfortable to actually come forward in the case that they're violated or they are abused by a family member or someone within the house. And then another opportunity to exploit is the utilization of social workers. So even though the social work profession in Malawi is actually just growing, we actually have about 1,200 registered social workers at the moment. But these social workers should actually be utilized. All right, these skilled social workers should actually be utilized. They should be placed in government departments, such as maybe the Ministry of Gender and Social Welfare. They should also be placed in schools, but also in the local communities, so that they can actually give the right information and the right help to people. So for instance, we have child protection services under the Ministry of Social Welfare. And one of the mandates of child protection services is to ensure that children are safe and all their necessities are actually what? Are actually available. And child protection services actually helps in the case that maybe a child is poor or maybe the family is unable to provide for the child, to link those families with welfare services so that the child can actually access the services that they need. So all these can only happen if you actually have someone in place who is trained and understand how the system works, but also can provide counseling and oversight on issues to do with social welfare. So social workers are actually underutilized, and maybe the government should think of employing them and placing them in the communities so that they can deal directly with challenges as they're rising. And lastly, revision of our law. Some of the laws that we have pertaining to children actually puts the children at risk. So, for instance, in the Child Care Protection and Justice Act of 2010, it actually states that the family members, the parents, as well as members of the state, which of these members of the state includes the police service and also the chiefs that we have in our communities, can actually decide to take a child under their wing if they feel like the child is being neglected and the like. This law leaves a lot to be desired because it gives the mandate to so many people to decide the future of a child, of which I can decide today and say, I feel like this child, according to what I'm observing, I feel like this child is being neglected or this child is abused, and I will take that child away from the family. What this has happened is that it has actually left a lot of children to be prone to being trafficked and also to being sold for labor, because we do have instances where people would take a child's relative to keep them because they feel like, okay, I'm going to take better care of the child, all right? And then the child, instead of sending the child to school, the child will be used as a domestic worker. So under the revision of the law, we also need to look at our laws on foster care. So even though the government stipulates in the laws to say if a child is in danger, the state can take the child and place them in foster care or place them in children's home. What the law is not clear on, or maybe on the implementers' part, is who is responsible for these homes and who is to finance these homes. So those are just some of the challenges and opportunities when it comes to child welfare and family welfare. So this is the end of my presentation, and I will invite questions if any.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And for our participants, if you have any question for the speaker, please add them to the chat or you can raise your hand. Yeah, we have a question from participant in the chat. Miss already, right?
Okay, what are the main barriers? Okay, thank you so much, Abdul, for your question. So one of the key barriers when it comes to, one of the key barriers when it comes to families accessing basic services such as healthcare and education as follows. I'll start with education. So education here in Malawi, for instance, primary schools, they are actually for free, okay? However, in practice, they are not really free because when you send your child to primary school, the teaching is for free, but they are going to demand that the child should pay examination fee. The child should pay project fee. Project fee is a fee that you give for the development of the school. Let's say maybe a toilet has broken down and they have to fix that. So project fee. So most families are unable to actually pay or have finances to actually do that. So that's the first one. Then the second one is where those services are. So accessibility. You'll find that our healthcare, when it comes to hospitals, according to the laws, there should be a health facility, that's primary health care. There should be a health facility within every 5 to 8 kilometer radius. But you find out that people will actually walk 15 to 20 kilometers to access health. So that has also been a challenge. And the same goes for school, especially secondary school. So one of the contributing factors is, as a nation, we have not done well in building more schools to accommodate the growing population. So we are still using the same facilities that were designed for 10 million people about 15 years ago, and now we are like at 21 million people. So we're using the same facilities. And as the country is expanding, we haven't built new facilities to actually accommodate those people. So what has the government been doing to this end? In terms of education, we actually have bursaries that are available, and also people that are available to say, if you're unable to pay for secondary school education, then there are bursaries available to pay for those students. And then secondly, we also have well wishers from NGOs, but also individuals in the country that say, if your child is unable to pay for the development fee and the like, they come into play and pay for that fee so that they can access education. In terms of health, we have moved from healthcare to community health. So the emphasis now is on community health, where there's a health worker, we call them community health workers, or HSAs, health surveillance officers, that are actually placed at community level, so that people, this is to do with accessibility. Instead of people going to the health facilities, traveling 10 or 15 kilometers, they can actually access services right at their community. And here we are looking at the essential services. So maternal health, under 5 clinic, or maybe if you have malaria and you need drugs, those people are trained to deal with those issues at community level. And only those serious illnesses that need referrals, then communities have also come up with ways to sort out their transport so that people can go there. But also our tertiary hospitals, they conduct what we call mobile clinics. I think they do them quarterly. So instead of people going to meet a specialist and the like, the government has made provision for those specialists to actually go into communities to meet people that are there. So I think maybe in terms of what steps can create more suitable opportunities, I think we should work more on meeting the services of people right there in their communities, other than centralizing everything. So I think that can actually help. Paulina, what are the biggest challenges faced by family and children, especially in rural areas? In rural areas, we have a lot of poverty, and then right to education, right to health, all those rights, most people don't enjoy those rights. And then even access to basic services that somebody needs, such as loan facilities and the like, we do not have those. In terms of poverty, what the government has been doing is to help with food security. So we have what we call fertilizer subsidy program, where they give farming materials, farm inputs rather, such as fertilizer and seed, so that at least families can grow food enough to feed themselves and maybe have some leftovers that they can use for agricultural purposes. But also we have a lot of non-governmental organizations that have been training people in the rural areas in different economic activities. So for instance, village savings and loans are becoming more prominent, and they are targeting women so that at least they can be financially or economically empowered. But then also there have been the creation of agriculture cooperatives to actually help people to produce more for commercial purposes. And then we also have social cash transfer programs, where those that are vulnerable in the communities are given a certain amount of money. That certain amount of money is just to cater for their basic necessities, just such as food. So how do they identify, how do we define vulnerables here? So a mother who is widowed, somebody living with a disability, families that are in extreme poverty, those are the ones that actually receive social cash transfer. Yeah, but other than that, from also sociological perspective, I feel it's also very important to actually empower the communities. So even though we have self-help programs, most of these self-help programs are still funded by a lot of donors, but hopefully in the next few years, I think the donors should move away because they have actually paved the way and have made that introduction to say we can find means by ourselves on how to assist ourselves. And the donors should actually pull away and let communities find more effective and sustainable means to improve their livelihood. So I think those were all the questions that I have. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for answering. I think you very good answer from Professor. Before I proceed this one, for our participant, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the phone of three.
Okay.
Okay. And again. Okay, another one. Two. Thank you for your cooperation. Finally, we come to the end of visiting lecture today. We would like to thank you for Ms. Pacharo for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for our participants. At least we hope for collaboration in the future with them is Teacherpreneur University in Malawi. The visiting lecture for today and your appreciation. Thank you and please stay. Thank you so much.